But on this particular occasion, as Jesus was walking and blind Bartimaeus encountered Jesus, he asked himself that same question one more time: what do you want me to do for you? And eventually blind Bartimaeus, in his own spirit, in his own soul, responded to Jesus, and he said, I want to see again. I want to see again. How many of us in our own experience have encountered Jesus over and over again and heard the words of Jesus, what do you want me to do for you? And yet even though we might know what we want, we're not sure how to really directly respond to Jesus' question. How many of us have felt perhaps a bit like blind Bartimaeus, that if Jesus really was to ask us that question, and if we were really to respond with an honest answer, how many of us would feel as though we perhaps didn't want the gift that Jesus was ready to give us? Amen. Perhaps some of us felt at times a little paralyzed by the gift that Jesus wants to give to us. Because when Jesus gives us the gift, in this case blind Bartimaeus, when Jesus gave blind Bartimaeus his gift of sight, his life could never be the same again. He was never able to look back and say, well, I'm a victim, I'm blind, and so I have to sit and beg on the side of the street. There was a moment in blind Bartimaeus' life when he was able to respond directly to Jesus. This is what I want. This is what Jesus gave him. And he was eventually able to be empowered in his own life to change, to be different. You know, I really believe that the whole of Scripture is about transformation. It's about change. It's about who we are. It's about changing who we are. It's about enabling ourselves to become adult, if you will. I really believe that's what Paul was addressing in his letter to the church at Corinth. That famous passage that we so often use at weddings, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And often we miss out this middle passage of this particular reading. And it says, when I was a child, I thought like a child. I acted like a child. But now I'm become an adult and I put away childish ways so that I can fully become what God has called me to be. We often miss out that particular passage, and I really believe that we sometimes miss that out because we are a little scared of what it means to be mature Christians, or what it really means to become adult, or what it really means to be a people who need to put away childish ways in order to become the adults that we have been called to be. In Metropolitan Community Church Los Angeles, we are 41 years old. It's time for us to put away childish ways and to become the adults that we are. This is our 41st annual Congregational meeting. And for those of us who've been around for those entire 41 years, not me, but for those of us who have, it's time for us to come into our maturity. It's time for us to respond to the question of Jesus, what do you want me to do? And like blind Bartimaeus, we need to respond, I want to see again. I want to become the adult. I want to become a person who has come into their fullness in Jesus Christ. Now, I want to say that for many of us in the LGBT community, I think it's difficult for us to grow up. It's difficult for us to grow up. You know, most of our social environment is spent around places that we should only do in our adolescence. I can't stay up beyond 12 o'clock these days. I'd rather be home in bed or curled up on the sofa watching a good movie. But the reality is that most of the social experiment of our community is centered and doesn't actually start until 2 o'clock in the morning. I can't do it. And yet many of us live as if we're still in our 20s. Now, there are some folks in our congregation who are still in their 20s, and we'll allow that to be. The reality is that many of us, and I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but the reality is that we try to do everything that we still wanted to do when we were 20s and we're in our 40s and 50s. And it's time for us to grow up in the 60s and 70s. I don't know if anyone's ever told you there's a gift that all pastors get, and that's it, they can hear 360 degrees. They can hold one conversation over here and still hear the other 4 conversations that are going on over here. It's a gift we get given. It's a gift we have to acquire. Growing up. It's hard for us to grow up. It's hard for us to put away childish ways. And yet blind Bartimaeus, in his response to Jesus, was doing exactly that. He was asking God to help him put away the things that had disabled him in the past so that he could become fully alive in Jesus Christ, so that he could see again, see the fullness of who he was, see the fullness of what life could really be like. No longer in the shade of his blindness, but in the light of the world in which he found himself. He was no longer able to beg at the side of the road because he could no longer say he was blind. He had to become responsible, and he had to become accountable for his life, for his actions, and for all that it entailed to become a grown-up human being. Sisters and brothers, not only us as a church, but us as individuals are being called beyond our childhood experience to become a full adult, become fully mature so that we can see again. What is it that you would ask of Jesus this morning if he pondered you that same question that blind Bartimaeus was pondered? What do you want? Now, I guess some of us would ask for eternal youth so that we could still do all those wonderful things. And yet the reality is that for many of us, there are many things that we would like to have taken from us, removed from our experience, so that we could truly see again, so that we could truly be fully alive, so that we could truly become fully human. But if Jesus is asking you that question this morning, and Jesus is certainly responding to that question this morning, and certainly giving you what it is that you ask, we certainly believe that's the Jesus that is on the road in this journey with us. If that is certainly the question, what is it that you need to do? What is it that I need to do? What is it that we need to do differently in order to become and be able to see again? Because you can't keep doing the same things and expect a different result. You can't keep doing the same things and expect that somehow the same things that you do will bring about some different experience than the experience you're in. If you really want to see again this morning, that means that we need to change something in our lives. We need to shift some focus. We need to do something differently in order to see things differently, in order to become the church, to become the human beings, to become the lovers, to become the friends, to become whatever it is that will really reach its fullest potential. And that is risky business. It's risky business because we're creatures of habit. We like to be able to do the same things over and over again and expect a different result. We like to be able to do the same things that we fit comfortably into our lives and into our boxes. But you know something I've realized in my life, that if I want the same results, then I need to keep doing the same things. But if I want something different, I need to do my life differently. Blind Bartimaeus had no choice. Once he could see, he had to do things differently. And once you and I see, once you and I realize that we want a different result, once you and I realize that we want lives that are dynamic and exciting and challenging and full of blessing,